Go ahead.
Good morning. Welcome to the City of Phoenix Economic Development and Equity Subcommittee. Today is November 14th, 2021. I'm calling this meeting to order. Are there any call to the public?
There's not.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion for the approval of the EDE minutes from October 27th, 2021?
So moved.
Second. I got a motion from Councilwoman Stark, a second from Councilwoman O'Brien. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Let's see. I have information and discussion for the Community Land Trust Model.
Chairwoman Pastor and subcommittee members, our first discussion item this morning is Community Land Trust Model, and here at the table for this presentation we have Titus Matthew, our Housing Director, Aubrey Gonzalez, Assistant Housing Director, and Stephanie Brewer, Executive Director with Newtown, CDC. And with that, I'll turn it over to Titus.
Ginger?
Yes. Chairwoman.
We're having, or on my side, I'm having difficulty hearing. It's breaking in and out.
Okay. Okay, we understand that WebEx has been having some problems. We do have David here, though, with us working on it. Can you hear me okay right now?
I can hear you, but what happens is then it starts crack, like I don't even know how to explain it. The video starts cracking.
Okay.
So there's clarity, but then when you start, you'll be going and then all of a sudden a crackle will go through. So
okay.
We'll just deal with it.
Okay. All righty. So Chairwoman Pastor, we will go ahead and turn it over to Director Matthew.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of Subcommittee. We're here to provide you with information about the Community Land Trust Model. With me today, as Ginger mentioned, is Aubrey Gonzalez, Assistant Housing Director, and Stephanie Brewer, Executive Director of Newtown CDC. Initiative 7 was to expand efforts to preserve existing housing stock under the Housing Phoenix Plan approved by City Council in August of 2020. The City Council approved the Housing Phoenix Plan consisting of 9 policy initiatives to create or preserve 50,000 homes by 2030. Initiative 7, expanding efforts to preserve existing housing stock, includes 4 components. Component A, land banking. Component B, implement a community land trust program. Component C, implement a landlord incentive and resources. And component D, expanding the rental rehabilitation program. This presentation will focus on component B, implementing a community land trust program referred to as CLT. We will provide an overview of the CLT model and an example. At this time, I'm turning it over to Aubrey Gonzalez, Assistant Housing Director.
Thank you, Director Matthew. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, in a typical CLT model, the CLT requires, the CLT acquires the property with the home, rehabilitates the home, then sells the home to an income-eligible homebuyer. Sorry about my slides here. The land is placed in a trust and the homebuyer mortgages the amount needed to purchase the home, not the land. This reduces the overall cost to the homebuyer. The homeowner pays a nominal lease fee for the land to the trust while owning the home. When the homeowner decides to move, the trust has the first right to purchase the home at fair market value, and the trust will purchase the home. The trust will perform any necessary rehabilitation and sell to another income-eligible homebuyer, and the cycle begins again. This model creates an opportunity for income-eligible households to participate in homeownership, ensures long-term affordability by maintaining ownership of the land, and homes remain in trust in perpetuity. The land is held in trust, generally with a 99-year renewable lease. There are more than 225 CLTs in the United States, and according to CommunityWealth.org's 2020 Key Facts and Figures about CLTs, 79% of CLT residents are first-time homebuyers, 82% of CLT residents have income less than 50% of area median income, referred to as AMI. Each CLT may have unique stewardship and board composition. Program eligibility requirements and prerequisites, such as homebuyer education courses, may vary across CLT programs. The CLT model and purpose remain consistent: to ensure long-term homeownership affordability. Newtown CDC CLT is the largest and oldest in Arizona. I will now turn it over to Stephanie Brewer, Executive Director of Newtown CDC CLT, to provide an overview of their CLT model.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the subcommittee, for allowing me to present today on our model for community land trust. I am Stephanie Brewer, the Executive Director of Newtown. We have been in a nonprofit since 1994 and a community land trust since 2001. We also a HUD-approved housing counseling agency since 2008. Currently, we have 160 properties in our portfolio, and we have provided $6.6 million in down payment assistance match funds. Newtown's mission, really, I want to highlight the well-being, financial well-being. We've found that when you have financial well-being, you tend to have other areas of your life. You also have well-being. So we start with the financial well-being of families and then build from there, hopefully to home ownership. The CLT provides access to home ownership for people who are otherwise priced out of the market. These are hardworking people, usually working 1 or 2 jobs, definitely working 40 hours a week. They can qualify for a mortgage, but there's no house on the market for what they qualify for. Oh. Let me go back. Oh, there we go. But first, we want to really define what the area median income is for the Maricopa County District. The 100% AMI is what the average person in the valley makes. We provide homeownership opportunities to up to 80% AMI, and right now for a family of 4, that is $63,200 annually between any of the members of the household that work. So if you have 3 people that work in a family of 4, you are not allowed to make over $63,200. Oh, that slide appeared. All right. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay. It's going to appear on the... Okay. Following Aubrey's slides, let's walk through the process. So first, Newtown itself buys the house off the market with a realtor. So we scour MLS, we find houses that we put offers on. So we are competing with investors and cash offers in this market. We rehab the house to HQS standards, housing quality standards that HUD sets for all public funds. Thank you. We make sure that all major systems have a useful life of 5 years because we don't want homeowners to move into a house and not be able to have major repairs in the first 5 years and set themselves up to be successful homeowners. We do provide some finishes, but they're definitely secondary to making sure that the systems are in place first. So once we have the rehab done, we sell the home to an eligible buyer. And this is how we do it. This slide is between the homeowner and the CLT. So we have already bought the house, and this is us selling it to a low-income individual. So the homeowner buys the house for below market value. They buy the improvements and lease the land. They have a 99-year renewable lease, and the restricted sale price is based on an equation that we will go over in a few more slides.
Excuse me. We're having difficulty on our side hearing anything. and it's breaking in and out. So one of the solutions for our council members is to call in if we want to call in, or we can go down to chambers, pause and go down to chambers. So can I just put a 5-minute pause while I get a consensus of what we want to do?
I'll go to the chamber.
Okay.
This is
Councilman O'Brien, would you like to call in or go to the chamber?
I'm actually doing okay for WebEx now. I can call in too if that makes it, if I start having problems.
So give me at least 3 minutes. Let's pause right now. So that if you want to call in, I'll have Ginger give you the call-in number, and those that want to go to chambers can go to the chambers.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Pastor. Due to technical difficulties, we're going to pause the council meeting.
Welcome to the Economic Development and Equity Subcommittee. Today is November 16th, 2021. I am beginning this meeting all over, so call to the public. I believe there's nobody here for call to the public. The approval of EDE minutes from October 27th to 2021. Could I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Councilwoman O'Brien, are you on?
I am.
Could you please second the approval of the minutes?
I second the approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stark and Councilwoman O'Brien. I have a second from Councilwoman O'Brien. Please, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are now back to the Community Land Trust model. We will begin this great presentation, and Titus, take it away.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Thanks for having us here this morning. We're here to provide you with information about the Community Land Trust model. With me today is Aubrey Gonzalez, Assistant Housing Director, and Stephanie Brewer, Executive Director of Newtown Cdcclt. On June 16, 2020, the City Council approved the Housing Phoenix Plan, consisting of 9 policy initiatives to create or preserve 50,000 homes by 2030. Initiative 7, expanding efforts to preserve existing housing stock, includes 4 components. Component A was land banking. Component B was to implement a community land trust program. Component C was implementing landlord incentives and resources. And component D was expanding the rental rehabilitation program. This presentation will focus on component B, implementing a community land trust program referred to as CLT. We will provide an overview of the CLT model and offer an example. At this time, I'm turning it over to Aubrey Gonzalez, Assistant Housing Director.
Thank you, Director Matthew. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. In a typical CLT model, the CLT acquires the property with the home, rehabilitates the home, then sells the home to an income-eligible homebuyer. The land is placed in a trust, and the homebuyer mortgages the amount needed to purchase the house, not the land. This reduces the overall cost to the homebuyer. The homeowner pays a nominal lease fee to the land to the trust while owning the home. When the homeowner decides to move, the trust has the first right to purchase the home at fair market value. The trust will purchase the home. The trust will perform any necessary rehabilitation and sell to another income-eligible homebuyer, and the cycle begins again. This model creates an opportunity for income-eligible households to participate in home ownership, ensures long-term affordability by maintaining ownership of the land, and homes remain in trust in perpetuity. The land is held in trust, generally with a 99-year renewable lease. There are more than 225 CLTs in the United States. According to CommunityWealth.org's 2020 Key Facts and Figures about CLTs, 79% of CLT residents are first-time homebuyers. 82% of CLT residents have income less than 50% of area median income, referred to as AMI. Each CLT may have unique stewardship and board composition. Program eligibility requirements and prerequisites such as homebuyer education courses may vary across CLT programs. The CLT model and purpose remain consistent to ensure long-term homeownership affordability. Newtown Cdcclt is the largest and oldest CLT in Arizona. I will now turn it over to Stephanie Brewer, Executive Director of Newtown Cdcclt, to provide an overview of their CLT model.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for allowing me to present today. So I am Stephanie Brewer, Executive Director of Newtown. We are a nonprofit that's been in existence since 1994. We've been a community land trust since 2001. We've also a HUD-approved housing counseling agency since 2008. Currently, we have 160 properties in our portfolio, and we have provided $6 million in down payment assistance match funds. Newtown's mission is to help people improve their financial well-being. The well-being part of that is very important to Newtown because we have learned that if you are financially well, you tend to be well in other areas of your life too. So we start with financial well-being, and we hope that it ends up in home ownership. The CLT provides access to home ownership for people who are otherwise priced out of the market. These are hardworking individuals that are working 1 or 2 jobs, absolutely working 40 hours a week, qualify for a mortgage, but there are no houses on the market for what they qualify for. So we just want to be really clear about AMI and set this point before we start going through the other slides. The midpoint of AMI is 100%. That would be what the majority of people in the county make. We provide affordable home ownership to people that make 80% AMI, which right now, for a family of 4, is $63,200. This is reset every year by HUD to analyze the area median income every year. So this was just set in July. Also part of our program is a maximum 30% of income cannot be spent on housing costs. That will dictate what we sell the house for. So following Aubrey's slides, we'll walk you through the process. First, we buy the house. The CLT buys the house off the market through MLS with a realtor. We compete with investors and cash offers, just like everybody else is competing right now. Once we are successful in buying the house, then we make sure that the houses will pass HUD housing quality standards. We require that all major systems have a useful life of 5 years or more. We don't want to set a homeowner up to fail within the first 5 years. So we want to make sure that the roof, the AC, the water heaters, they are all useful and new. And then if we still have money left over, we will make sure that the house has new finishes, flooring, kitchens, bathrooms are typical, and paint. So once we have the house rehabbed, then we have a buyer. So now we sell the house to an income-eligible buyer, and we retain ownership of the land. So this part is between the homeowner and the community land trust. So the homeowner buys the house for below market value. They buy just the house and not the property. There's a 99 renewable year lease. We restrict the sale price that they can sell the house to, or house for, back to us. And we require that it's owner occupied. So we hold the land since the subsidy has been put into the land, and the subsidy is the grant funds that we receive through federal pass-through grants to be able to do this program. And here's an example of a sale price for a CLT house and a market house. This is an actual example that we had from this summer where we bought the house back and resold it. So as you can see, the Newtown home, the total housing costs are $926. That is the total housing cost with insurance, taxes, and their mortgage. You can see the market rate house, the total housing costs are $1,791. I'd also like to point out that at the CLT house, we also provide down payment assistance. So if a person comes in with $5,500, we can match that with $22,000. So that means they go into owning the house already with $27,500 in equity. So the total income needed to buy the CLT house is $41,600. You can see that is 67% of AMI, well below the 80% that we require. The income needed to buy the market house is $68,000, which is over 80% AMI. While the owner owns the home, we also support them. So we call this our Stewardship Program. We want to make sure that the homeowners are successful through the entire process of owning the home. So the CLT has never had a house in foreclosure, and we've never lost a house to foreclosure, even during the foreclosure crisis. We help the homeowners with refinancing to make sure that they're not getting into a predatory loan, and we help them with the resale. We have a tool library that any homeowner can borrow tools from us. The wheelbarrow seems to be very important right now. We also provide a home repair loan fund at 0% interest. So this is for major emergencies. This is not for cosmetic. This is usually replacing ACs and water heaters. And we're required to monitor and ensure that the restrictions are being met. We're required to do a drive-by inspection twice a year to make sure that the house looks lived in and kept up. Then when the homeowner decides it's time to move on, mostly their families have become too big for the house they bought, we buy the house back from the homeowner. And it is based on a resale formula. So we use an appraisal-based formula, which is based on the value of the improvements and the land. So Newtown buys it back for 25% of the appreciation. That is just market value. So when they first bought the house, they had to have an appraisal done to be able to buy the house through the bank. We order a new appraisal, and whatever that difference is, 25% of that, the homeowner will receive upon sale. We also, I would like to point out, we do not touch equity. So whatever the homeowner has paid off on their mortgage, they receive that money back also, because we buy the house back for the initial price they bought the house, plus the appreciation of 25%. So right now we have 30 resales that we have done, and the average amount that the seller receives is $33,488. That is just an appreciation. They also receive whatever they've paid off on their mortgage in addition to the $33,000. And then we sell it again, and we do it again and again. We sell it for a lower price initially. We buy it back for a lower price because the homeowner didn't buy the house at market. So they're getting a percentage of what they bought the house for, and we do it again and again. Currently, we have 2 houses that we are on the 3rd homeowner, and each time the AMI stays relatively the same. And now I will pass it back over to Titus.
So what it sounds like to me that it just stays within the market or within the land trust, and I want to use the word stock, but we continue then, a family moves in, purchase it, then once they decide that the home is, they need a bigger home, then they sell it, but it stays within the trust and it gets sold then to another family that needs some affordability in purchasing a house to
Correct.
Then create the economic, I would say wealth, but create the economic drive
Yes.
that is needed.
Yes, and for each homeowner that buys it again and again, we can provide down payment assistance to the new homeowner too.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
The second buyer, we can provide down payment assistance to every time the house gets sold, we can provide down payment assistance.
Okay, so then that's how we continue for a lifetime perpetuity of affordability then, and making sure that there is affordability throughout several people's lifetimes or generations of lifetimes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This table shows some of the benefits, roles, and considerations for CLTs and homeowners. With CLTs, affordable housing stock is preserved, as you mentioned, Councilman Pastor, typically up to 80% of AMI. Support to homeowners is offered, such as homebuyer education, financial awareness, foreclosure prevention. The CLT provides oversight of the CLT structure, such as the board composition, day-to-day admin, and enforces the ground lease where applicable. Non-traditional dual ownership, land and home acquisition costs are incurred by the CLT. CLT homeowners receive an opportunity for homeownership without the higher cost of the land included in their mortgage. The benefits of the homeownership, such as building equity and household mobility, stable housing, experience related to property maintenance and repairs. At this time, we're prepared to answer any questions from the subcommittee. And this concludes our presentation.
So Titus, how would we set this up? I mean, what would be, I know that we'll have a bigger policy discussion, but this is one model, right?
So Councilwoman Pastor, generally for a CLT for single home ownership, they're not in different models for CLTs generally. It's just different nuances within the CLT. But if the council at policy decides to move forward with this, what we will have to do as a housing department is do an RFP to procure a CLT or have another discussion, the pros and cons of doing it in-house with the City of Phoenix, which has some challenges in itself. But the most efficient way currently in the marketplace is doing a procurement to procure a CLT.
Is to procure a CLT?
Yes, to seek out proposals from different
okay.
CLTs.
Okay. I was thinking internally, and I was like, well, I think it's going to cost a lot, but, I mean, we can
You're
do
correct.
it if we want. I mean, we would have to know what the cost is. My understanding is we would have to build a huge team, which, I mean, I get it. But if that's what we're really, truly wanting to do, some affordability, and have it in our city, that's one way of doing it, or at least preserving it. Now, I know that we did a community land trust program. Will we see in the future implement landlord incentives and resources and then expand the rental rehabilitation program? Will that come in the future?
So, Councilwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, we currently have an approved landlord incentive program that's on its way. So actually we received an additional $1 million in ARP funds, and that's being utilized to provide incentives to landlords to provide Section 8 housing. And the Neighborhood Services Department also has a rental rehab program currently in progress.
Chairwoman Pastor, if you would like, at a future subcommittee meeting, we could have both Housing and Neighborhood Services come back to provide an overview of the landlord incentive program as well as the rental rehab program.
I think it would be good, and my committee members could correct me if I'm wrong, I think it would be good so that our committee members understand all the different type of programs. I'm not saying that they don't, but be reacquainted, since we have a number of them, to then understand all the different elements or programs that we have to help and the affordability piece. And I do know, just because I'm a planner, I do know that in December, we will have another presentation with affordability, since we're going to start talking or start bringing the subject up and start really moving what we need to do to make it happen within the plan. So it might work with everything in December. So appreciate the program, appreciate the presentation. This is something that I'm interested in, and I'm sure others on the councils would be interested in, to make sure that we continue to provide for our community, but also continue for generations to generations that will be here. They'll be way before me. I'll be gone by then. So I'm hoping my great, great, great grandkids will then remember. But thank you. Appreciate it. So I think I'm going to the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Yes, Chairwoman Pastor and subcommittee members, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is a discussion on the Office of DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And here to provide the update is Deputy City Manager Inger Erickson. And with that, I'll turn it over to Deputy City Manager Erickson.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, today I'm here to provide an update on the timeline for the initial development steps of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. In the 2021-22 budget process, Council approved the creation of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The office will initially consist of 2 positions. The lead position will be the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, with 1 administrative staff position to provide support for the office. The charge of the office is to ensure equitable distribution of city services, and to champion the delivery of racially equitable programs for the community and for city staff across the city of Phoenix. think the next slide is slowly coming up. There it is. Earlier this year, staff completed preliminary research on 16 peer cities across the United States. The list is up there on the screen. We included Austin and Seattle, which we knew were of interest to some members of the council. There it goes. It looks like it's going again. Looks like we've got a little delay. Right. Staff research was focused on the best practices and the organization of the DEI office within the city structure. Specifically, if the city had both a DEI and an equal opportunity department, and if so, were they combined or were they separate? Identifying the core functions of the DEI office was also part of the research focus. One too many. All right, there you go. All right. Of these 16 cities surveyed, 13 of the 16 did have a DEI office, and 9 of the 16 had both a DEI office as well as an EOD office. Based on the cities which were researched, staff did find that the general function of a DEI office was to advance social and racial equity through data collection and equity frameworks, as well as to provide education, training, and support for city staff to better understand potential operational biases. It further showed that the DEI office also develops programs and resources to be used by the community that will help break down barriers based on biases. The general function of the Equal Opportunity Office is to protect those groups, to defend protected groups from discrimination, enforce policies that protect these groups, and also investigate reports of discrimination. The City of Phoenix Equal Opportunity Office is set up in that same manner as our research demonstrated. It's a separate office. And you can see based on this slide, the DE office is education and evaluation and celebration. The EOD office would be more compliance and enforcement. So a couple of cities, Seattle had this racial equity toolkit that they developed, and this toolkit helps the members of the departments go through when they're providing new programs and new budgets to identify if the policies are in the programs are treating each community equally or equitably. The city of Austin had a equity assessment tool that each department went through, and they used that data to create a equity dashboard. One example that we found in this particular tool was that the Water Protection Department identified areas of inequity within their watershed planning and field operations, and that was something they needed to address. Other best practices found with the research included the office would provide technical assistance and training to city departments so that staff better understood operational biases. And finally, as the city prepares to move forward, the staff hired for this office will continue to further do research on best practices from other organizations and look to implement tools within the City of Phoenix that's appropriate for our community. The officer's responsibility will be to establish the goals of the office, working with the city management, elected officials, and the community to make sure that we have an equity and inclusion lens on citywide policies and decision-making processes. They'll also include researching, developing, and recommending strategies to foster those goals, to review current practices and policies, and to analyze the extent they support or hinder the goals of the office. They will also be the liaison with local boards, commissions, and community diversity groups and other agencies concerning the DEI initiatives. Again, we're here today to just tell you what the next steps are. The next steps will also be, this office will always remain in the city manager's office for the foreseeable future. If there's a need to grow and expand it as time goes, that'll be an opportunity as well. But you can see on this slide that right now we're drafting what the job announcement and the job roles and responsibilities will be. We're going to post it in January, providing all things go well. And hopefully by April, we'll have someone on board to do this very important work that we need in the City of Phoenix. And with that, I can take any of your questions and bring back information in the future if necessary.
I'm going to go to Councilwoman Stark and then Councilman Ansari.
Thank you. So are you going to use our Human Relations Commission as the sounding board, or are you still looking at what board you might use?
So I think a variety of boards will probably be involved. Certainly that will be one of them. And again, I think today we want to make sure we gather as much information as possible to make sure that we're going in the right direction that the mayor and council wants.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Inger, how would you gather that information?
To be honest, we still have to work through that. I'll be honest with you. I've taken this assignment in the last week, and so I'm still kind of getting up to speed. But this is the timeline that we do have, and we'll make sure that we get back with you on some of those questions.
Yeah, because I think we need to incorporate all those that are going to be touched by this, and even some of the departments, because I know I want to say the sustainability department spoke to me and is waiting for the DEI person to come in to then look at their plan to see if it's in line. So people are anxiously waiting, but we also need to figure out what we need.
Absolutely.
I guess is what I'm saying. Councilwoman Ansari, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Ansari had questions on the past presentation, but due to me trying to manage this, wasn't paying attention to the WebEx here. And so she has questions on this item, but I also want to bring back the presenters for the past item. Is that possible? I don't know what the rules are.
Chairwoman Pastor, that is possible.
Okay.
We'll take the questions and comments on the DEI item, and then as soon as we're done, we'll bring up Director Titus Matthew to answer additional questions on the Community Land Trust.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really, really appreciate it. So Inger, thanks so much for the presentation. I'm really excited about this office. We know that Phoenix has always been a very diverse city, so I'm glad that we're going to have an office that recognizes that. Also appreciate the data that you provided, some of the information from other cities, and that we're looking at best practices. I'm wondering, I know we're starting with this one individual, which sounds like a very enormous task for one person to work across all departments. So I'm wondering if you know if there's data from staffing numbers from some of these other cities that you showed us in terms of like what a comparable office like this would look like for a city of our size.
Yes, Madam Chair and Councilwoman Ansari, what I did notice from the research that was completed, the offices it started out small, but they grew to 6 to 8 people in some cases. And I know that in Austin's case, they started their program in 2015, and they were able to get through all the departments and evaluate all the departments by 2019. So it takes a few years, obviously, and I think, prioritizing which departments or which areas we want to focus on first would probably be very important.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. And then can you speak at all to what sort of recourse or support from city leadership you expect this new individual, this new officer to have to actually implement recommendations?
I believe that this is one of the most important areas that the city manager will be focusing on. So I believe it will get all the support it needs to do the things it needs to do to make sure that we are doing things equitably across the city.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that's really interesting to hear about 6 to 8. I think that sounds about right. As the chairwoman said, I've also talked to other departments that seem to be really waiting on this one person, and I don't envy the job of this one individual that they're going to have to get up to speed very quickly. So excited to see how we can get that person on board, but then continue to grow this very important department. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilwoman O'Brien, do you have any questions? Thank you so much.
At this time.
Thank you. I will bring back item number 2, Community Land Trust Model, for some questions.
All righty. Thank you, Chairwoman Pastor. Coming back to the table, we've got Housing Director Titus Matthew and Assistant Housing Director Aubrey, I want to make sure I got your last name correct, Gonzalez. And our guest speaker, we're trying to see if we can get her back as well in case she's needed. But
thank you so much. I do apologize. Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, city staff, for continuing to work on this important item. I just had two quick questions. I'm curious how it will be determined how many houses we'll be able to purchase or acquire through the Community Land Trust, and if there are, I know it's based on AMI, but will we determine anything based on like areas of the city or anything like that?
Councilman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, and Councilman Ansari, very good question. So that's, I think, a further discussion we need to have from a policy directive in terms of what we need to do for the whole city. But in regards to the AMI, from a HUD perspective, and affordable housing is generally 80% AMI and below. But I think for CLTs, for single-family home ownership, generally, the studies have shown that the most successful participants are those from 50% to 80% AMI. So it also depends on how much the city wants to invest into this program, because that will enable us to figure out which target group within the AMIs we can help with a subsidy. So some of the options in subsidy are, for example, giving land, vacant land to the CLT, or giving existing houses that we own as a city to the CLT to keep it affordable. So those are the policy questions I think we need to discuss at a later date in terms of getting the council to agree how we should move forward with this model.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Titus. And then, do you know at all how CLT properties may be affected by market environments like the one that we're in now?
And Councilman Ansari and members of the subcommittee, another good question. So currently, the real estate prices is affecting CLTs because what's happening is, because of the market demand and the pricing, and we're finding that participants have to have a bigger subsidy to enable to afford the home. So that's a question that a lot of cities across the nation are looking into to see how we can increase the subsidy to keep these homes affordable.
I see. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming back to answer those questions.
Chairwoman?
Yes, Councilwoman O'Brien.
I have a couple of questions before these folks, if that's acceptable.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can we get additional information on, like, Newtown? She says they have 160 properties. I'd be curious to know a little bit more about how long have they had those properties. She said 2 of the houses are on their 3rd owner. I'd like to see data on how that's working for, how many are still first owners, and where are those folks, if they know, going after they sell back to the CLT.
Councilman O'Brien, members of the subcommittee, we can ask Newtown to provide a fact sheet about their model and the homes in the Community Land Trust.
Okay, and is Arizona Community Land Trust, is that here in Phoenix, or is that rural areas? Do you know?
So I believe currently, I cannot speak for Stephanie at the moment, but I think most of the homes are in Maricopa County.
Okay. So I would also be interested in knowing more about their data from that land trust here in Maricopa County. Thank you so much, Chairwoman.
Thank you. All right, you guys have additional information. I like being called back up. They're not laughing, Stark. They're not getting my sense of humor. Okay, item 4, disposition of city-owned former First National Bank of Arizona, CED.
Chairwoman Pastor and subcommittee members, coming to the table, we have our Community and Economic Development Director, Christine Mackey, as well as Courtney Carter, who is Program Manager on Chris's team. And then we also have Chad Bukowski, who is our Aviation Director. Go ahead, Chris.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We are excited to be here today to talk to you about the potential disposition of a long-owned City of Phoenix property at 24th Street and Jefferson. This property was acquired by our aviation department, and in fact, quite a number of years ago, our Deputy Director, Nathan Wright, was in the building. You'd be amazed the number of city employees you talk to who, at one point or another, had their offices within that building. Through council's guidance and direction, this is a property that we are looking for its forever use moving forward, and we would like to talk to you today about that opportunity. As Deputy City Manager Spencer said, with me is Courtney Carter, who's going to walk us through the history and the background of the building, the RFP timing, and the staff's recommended proposal. Courtney?
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman, Pastor, and council members. Thank you for this opportunity. So as Ms. Mackey said, we'll review the background and history of the site and the building in particular, the timeline of the RFP, and then get into some details regarding the developer's concept for site activation and the business terms around that. So the site itself was in January appraised at $480,000. It's a little over 1.5 acres large. The main building about 5,500 square feet. And the zoning, you'll see that the site is split where the north area is zoned for light industrial, south commercial. And this is in fact, this site is located at the entrance to the Gateway district, the Transoriented Development District. The building has significant historical and architectural details. It's quite important to the historic preservation community and the city. You see some of the details there. In fact, the property was one of the commercial developments highlighted in the city's Mid-Century Marvels book that was published sometime a few years back. Right, so how do we get here to the point that we're at today? The original RFP was released back in September of 2018. There was a fire at the property a couple of months following that, and ultimately we ended up canceling the RFP with no intent to reissue and went to a direct negotiations process. Today, we're here to talk about the results of that process. We, through that process, received 4 offers to purchase the property and selected the 1 South 24th Street Development Group as the preferred redeveloper of the property. That group is, the leadership is Alan A.P. Powell and Aaron Baer are leading the effort there. And you can see some of the principles of the organization that will be if we move forward with this group working on the redevelopment. So the site activation concept, it's really exciting. I think that the council, the subcommittee, and the community will definitely be excited about this. So it's very community-focused, heavy on making this property available to a cohort of nonprofits who otherwise could not afford their own brick-and-mortar locations. So almost a WeWork or co-working space for nonprofits to really tackle some of the community's opportunities for improvement. Just some of the partners you see here include the Arizona Black Chamber of Commerce and the both state and county NAACP branches. And there are more than this, but this gives you an idea of what the group of nonprofits ought to be hopefully working out of this location. So how are we going to activate this site? Well, as you can see here, the concept is to activate it as the Arizona Impact Center. What might that look like? You can see here the entrance, the reactivated, and here you have the concept for how the building itself might be utilized and the spaces within utilized. It's a very flexible design that the development group has come up with. What you see here is the space beneath the concrete parasols being used as a work location. You'll see in the coming slide this same space being repurposed and refashioned as a location for training. We've talked with the group about this space and building being a home for job fairs to support aviation's efforts to aviation and Sky Harbor's efforts to bring in more employees there. And here's another alternative. There are more than just these two floor plans, potentially, but this gives you an idea of the flexibility that has been built into the design and plan for the site's actuation. Here you see that in the lower half of the slide here, you see that same location that was a location for working. Here you have it potentially reorganized as a place for training. In the north, or sorry, in the upper section of the slide, you see sort of one-on-one meeting pods that could be moved around the floor, movable walls that could expand or close off certain areas for privacy if needed. So a very flexible design and plan there. So if we move forward with this group, what we're looking at is about a year and a half from this point, or I should say full council approval to pre-opening. So about a year and a half. And then the fire damage that I'd mentioned earlier, there was a building assessment done post-fire in spring of 2020. That assessment determined the building was structurally sound. The architectural features were in good condition, but to rehabilitate the building, we were looking at in excess of $1 million. You can see there.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I do want to note that we did have a historic preservation architect that went out to do this building assessment. As Mr. Carter's noted, this building is in mid-century marvels, and we did appear with Ms. Dodds, our historic preservation officer, before the historic preservation community, and they did. The building is very important to them. They had great focus on that. So when we had the building assessed, we made sure that it was a historic preservation architect that went out to look at the building and made sure that the items that they provided would again provide for that building's ability to remain historically eligible.
Chris, can we go to the historic piece?
Yes.
It says demolition. So are you demoing the whole thing?
Madam Chair, no ma'am. This is the interior of the building. There was some significant damage inside the building. That's all that it is.
Okay, so the outside, like the pictures show.
Yes, ma'am. It will remain as
it will remain, and then they'll just do the whole internal.
Yes, ma'am. And one of the proposals you'll see in your terms coming up will be a 30-year conservation easement to ensure that the building remains historic.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. So if the subcommittee today approves our moving forward, we would go to we've updated this, I apologize, not the December 1st or December 15th council formal to the full council for consideration. So the proposed business terms, as Ms. Mackey just alluded to, $240,000 in cash would go directly to the aviation department, who owns the building. The other half of the agreement would result in $240,000 in no-cost contractual services, meaning no cost to the end user, in this case, the aviation department. And that would be over a 5-year term. We, if moved to full council and approved, would enter into a disposition and redevelopment agreement with the developer. And as Ms. Mackey mentioned earlier, we would, as part of the transfer of ownership, put in place a 30-year declaration of restrictive covenants, HP Productions. And then finally, the developer would have to agree to a navigation easement, essentially protecting Sky Harbor operations from any incompatible development height or uses.
And Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, with that, we do request the subcommittee's approval to move forward to the formal city council meeting on December 15th. And with that, we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Councilwoman O'Brien, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councilwoman Ansari, do you have any questions?
I do not either. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Stark.
I'm just curious, what's going to be the revenue stream for that?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, as they look at their revenue stream coming in, it will be as leasing out the desk space, the office space, the meeting space that would be revenue to the Arizona Impact Center that would help them with their operations.
Okay, thank you.
So will it be like co-space or co-leasing? I can't remember the terms.
I'm sure
these
you're
days.
correct. Co-working.
Co-working, yeah.
Yes,
I just
ma'am.
wasn't sure.
Yes.
So it'll be like a co-working space.
Yes, ma'am. It'll be a co-working space for nonprofits, much like a WeWork or Galvanize or others would be, but to house nonprofits.
Got it. One last question. It's regarding the last slide. Let me see right here. Hang on. It talked about protects airport operations from incompatible development heights and noise-sensitive uses. In developing that property, will the development of that property and those windows be of noise protection? Only because that's one of the things that the FAA talk about.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, a number of those windows were blown out with the fire that happened at that location, and we'll be working through Aviation's planning department and through our planning department to be able to, for the part of the cost effectiveness that we showcased here, showed those window panes being replaced with the thicker glass that provides for more noise mitigation.
Yeah, because what I understand, or at least what I've been schooled, was it's in that contour area, and the panes need to be at least double or triple. And there's sound decibels that can't be higher, I think, than 25 inside the building.
Madam Chair, I'll ask the Aviation Director to answer that question for you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, you have a very good memory, so thank you for that question. And as it relates to incompatible uses, residential, those types of uses inside the noise contours, if for whatever reason the jurisdiction of authority permits incompatible uses, they have to then mitigate it down to that standard. For compatible uses, that is not required, but it's highly recommended, and we'll work with the developer to make sure that that's in place.
So I know it's for residential, but what is it for business?
For businesses, if it's deemed compatible, they are not obligated to mitigate to that standard, but we highly recommend it for the obvious reasons, to ensure that it's a usable facility for the occupants.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, when we were on site with the Arizona Impact Center, we did talk about the glass, the mitigation of the noise with the glass, seeing they have so many businesses and they're working, and that seemed to be something they indicated they wanted to move forward with.
Yeah, I mean, I would, especially if I'm going to be renting a space in there, and I would like little noise. I would like to feel like I'm not by the airport. All right, thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Okay, I think that was Councilwoman Anasari and Councilwoman Stark. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do I have everybody? I only heard us
Chairwoman, it was actually Councilwoman O'Brien who made that.
Oh, okay, Councilwoman O'Brien. Okay. Do I have a yay or a nay?
Yay.
Okay, that's Ansari. O'Brien? We need you for the record.
Yep.
Okay. The motion carries. Thank you. This is really challenging. Now I know what you guys go through. 2022 state and federal legislative agenda. Thank you.
Chairwoman, coming to the table, we have Frank McEwen, our Government Relations Director, as well as Lauren Armour from his team, and Eric Gudino.
Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. Oh, sorry, Corey. Thank you for allowing our Office of Government Relations the opportunity to share with this subcommittee the items from the draft legislative agenda for your review and approval today. As Deputy City Manager Spencer said, I'm Frank McEwen, Director of Government Relations, and with me today is Lauren Armour, Manager of State Relations, and Eric Gudino, Manager of Federal Relations. Each year from September and October, Government Relations reaches out to all the city departments to build the legislative agenda, which is based upon issues that may be discussed during the legislative process or even to gather potential legislative ideas. We combine that information and then brief each council member one-on-one and the mayor for their perspective on those items, as well as their own perspective on upcoming legislation. From there, we complete this draft legislative agenda, and today we present the items that are relevant to this subcommittee. For both the state and federal legislative processes, we do use a set of guiding principles, which Lauren and Eric will share as they start their presentations. And so with that, I will pass it on to Lauren to start the state legislative agenda. Thank you.
Good morning. As Frank mentioned, our legislative agenda each year begins with 4 key guiding principles that are our broadest mandate for advocacy on behalf of the city. Those include preserving shared revenues with the state, opposing unfunded mandates, protecting local authority, and preserving water resources. The other items I'll present today are those specific items from our agenda that relate to the subject matter of this subcommittee. First on that list is increasing or indexing the gas fuel tax and use fuel tax. The state taxes on gas and motor fuel have not been increased or indexed to adjust for inflation since 1991. Despite increases in population and the number of vehicles on the road, city revenues from those taxes have been offset. During this time, the state's and Phoenix's roadway system have grown significantly in terms of number of miles, while our roads have aged as well, putting greater maintenance burden on the City of Phoenix taxpayers as that goes along. So staff has recommended supporting efforts that would lead to increased statewide funding for transportation infrastructure. The next item on this list is supporting Luke Air Force Base. Luke Air Force Base was established in 1941 on land donated to the federal government by the city. It has evolved in the decades since to become a major economic force in the Phoenix region, having a total economic impact of more than $2 billion. The city partners with West Valley Cities and Maricopa County to protect and enhance Luke Air Force Base. Staff recommends opposing any legislation that negatively impacts the mission of Luke Air Force Base. Next, we have airport curb and ground transportation regulations. Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport is a wholly self-sustaining business enterprise and needs to maintain its ability to generate commercial revenues sufficient to operate, maintain, and develop infrastructure to meet current and future demand. The ability to regulate the use of airport curbs and other facilities by commercial for-profit businesses is vital to the operation of a safe, self-sustaining, and customer-friendly airport operation. Staff recommends monitoring and opposing any legislation that would limit the ability of an airport to regulate or set its own fees, including for ground transportation businesses or any commercial operation on its property. We have affordable clean energy. Sky Harbor is actively working toward achieving net zero carbon emissions. Over 90% of the airport's current carbon footprint, exclusive of aircraft emissions, is attributable to power generation and consumption. The most important resource to achieve net zero carbon emissions is access to affordable clean energy. Staff recommends monitoring and opposing any attempt to block opportunities for competition in the supply of renewable energy and supporting any programs that would provide funding or incentives for the development and implementation of sustainable energy or technology. This item is increasing the state reimbursement cap for semiconductor infrastructure. Currently, there are only 2 cities that have qualifying manufacturing facilities under the Arizona revised statutes. That's Chandler with its Intel facility, and now Phoenix with its development of the TSMC building. Phoenix just executed the intergovernmental agreement that the Arizona Department of Revenue requires to start obtaining money for its public infrastructure work. But there's currently a $50 million total cap on the amount of revenue they would be able to reclaim under that law. Modifying this cap would prevent Phoenix and Chandler from competing on those 2 infrastructure projects and allow for additional expansion of the TSMC facility in the future. Staff recommends amending the Arizona revised statutes to increase the total cap on reimbursements made to all cities to $100 million and to further provide that the most a single city could obtain is $50 million. And the final item on our agenda is short-term rentals. Over the past several years, short-term rentals have become popular, but they have also led to unintended consequences for neighborhoods. Issues can arise when renters take advantage of the benefits of a residential home but do not have the same accountability as a long-term renter or owner. Furthermore, the rise of short-term rentals has reduced the availability of housing options and a loss of economic benefits derived from hotels and other tourism revenues. To address these concerns, a bill was passed at the legislature last year, which was a step in the right direction but did not address all of Phoenix's local concerns. Staff recommends supporting efforts that continue to allow local or state regulation of short-term rentals that would address these issues. That concludes my presentation of the state agenda. I'll pass it to my colleague Eric Gudino for the federal agenda.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. The federal agenda is governed by 2 guiding principles: the promotion of fiscal sustainability and the protection of local authority. But before I get started, I want to talk about a momentous event that occurred yesterday. The President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This bipartisan legislation will invest in our nation's core infrastructure priorities at historic levels, unleashing new spending on roads and bridges, public transportation, the electric grid, natural resources, wildfire mitigation, broadband, clean drinking water, and wastewater infrastructure. It provides $1.2 trillion in total spending over 5 years, which includes $550 billion in new spending.
I have a question. Historic investments. Is that bridges? Is that roads? What is defined as historic investments?
Includes historic investments in all infrastructure.
All infrastructure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So now that the infrastructure bill is passed, there's a large influx of federal monies that will be made available through authorization and by formula or competitive grants, and we need to ensure we take advantage of every opportunity to capture available funding. So we've been working closely with city departments to identify projects and prepare for formula funding and plan for these competitive grant opportunities that will be available through this legislation. For our federal agenda, our city departments have submitted their priorities. The federal priorities for our departments relevant to this subcommittee from community development include, under the topic of environmental justice, wrong. I think you have the wrong. I apologize, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I think we have the wrong slideshow up.
As we're moving, I do have a question about the semiconductor industry, because I know that's a topic of moving that. But in the semiconductor industry, doesn't it use a lot of water?
Yes, it does use a lot of water, and I think the challenge will be to find that balance because it will bring a lot of high-wage employment as well as capital.
Okay, I'm just curious about that because I do know that it does use a lot of water. The other piece is that on a sustainability or environmental piece, there's other that goes along with it. So how do we balance that?
That'll be the challenge, but we're going to need to figure out how we balance the needs that we have for our water, as well as bringing in high-wage jobs through semiconductor jobs that TSMC and other opportunities will have. That will bring in.
So I understand the high wage jobs, but that's going to be the balance that we as a city has to figure that out because we're also pushing an environmental piece, and we're also pushing conservation of water and sustainability of what we're putting out in the environment. So. I'm just asking these questions because I think I should start asking these questions because I think it's a bigger conversation that we would have on a policy.
Madam Chair, can I have Christine from Economic Development just address that as well?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Madam Chair, you make incredibly wonderful points on making sure that we're sustainable in the long term. Our largest semiconductor manufacturing companies here in Phoenix reclaim and recycle with our water department somewhere between 83 and 93% of the water that they use. So to your point, those are things that we really need to pay attention to, working with our water department, making sure that that reclamation, they clean it, they put it back down into the aquifer, and are able to process that back through. As you look at the history of those semiconductor companies in the state of Arizona, that's the average that they've been able to reclaim on an annual basis since the early 1990s.
And then Councilwoman O'Brien, I heard you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I was actually going to talk a little bit about what Ms. Mackey just was explaining to you.
Thank you. Just keep it moving. We have technical difficulties all day today, so we'll just keep moving.
No.
I don't know what that is. It's not in my...
This is economic development? Okay. I can talk about these nonetheless. So in the area of environmental programs, environmental justice, we'll be supporting federal funding to provide assessment and cleanup and redevelopment efforts for brownfields. In the area of community development, we will be supporting the semiconductor industry, urging Congress to fully fund the CHIPS Act and adopt tax incentives to help strengthen the industry. Supporting appropriate funding levels for the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act.
On the WIOA, can we ask that we really look at the mandates that are given to us? I was in a meeting yesterday, and they were particularly talking about WIOA, on how it's very difficult for them to administer WIOA because of all the pieces or legislation that is part of this act. And so I would recommend that, or may I suggest that we possibly get with some of our partners to say, okay, as a collective, what would we like to advocate for WIOA? I know they're advocating for more money, but I think some of the administrative costs are high, and it's not covering in the WIOA dollars. So that's just what a recommendation I would just get with some of our constituents that we work with, or partners that we work with, to say, okay, you know, they're also going to lobby and do these things, so maybe we have a collective voice.
Absolutely, Councilwoman. We'd also support pursuing federal funding to expand broadband access, and we must close the digital divide to ensure that Phoenix can remain economically competitive. In the area of housing, we will support continued funding for the Choice Neighborhoods program. This program's grant centered on revitalizing severely distressed public housing communities and neighborhoods. We'll support continued funding for the Home Investment Partnership Program. These funds are used to create affordable housing units for low-income households and provide homeownership assistance for families at 80% or below the area median income level. We'll support increased federal funding levels and flexibility in the use of Section 8 and housing vouchers. This is the nation's largest rental assistance program. Continued support of the rental assistance demonstration. Funding is for public housing maintenance, which is important. Support for continuation and expansion of the low-income housing tax credit program, which allows for the development, redevelopment, and or rehabilitation of affordable housing units. And increased funding for the Public Housing Capital Fund program, which serves as the primary source of financing for public housing rehabilitation and development. In the area of COVID-19, we will oppose any efforts to repeal or reprogram local government funding and support ongoing flexibility in ARPA use. ARPA was the COVID legislation which provided funding for local municipalities. As you may know, earlier this year there was an effort to sweep the second tranche of funding for cities. Through efforts by the National League of Cities and the United States Conference of Mayors, those efforts were halted to sweep the second tranche. So we're going to be tracking and watching that issue closely, working with our congressional delegation and our national partners.
With that, Madam Chairman and committee members, we can take any questions you have regarding the items presented. And again, we presented just 2 items specific to this subcommittee. This was our first presentation, so you'll be seeing us 3 other times, and you'll really hear them because there's a lot of crossover. But any questions you have on these, we can answer. Otherwise, we would, wait for questions. We can pull that last slide and keep it up for.
Councilwoman O'Brien, do you have any questions?
I'm good at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ansari?
No questions, just thanks so much. Obviously very, very excited about the infrastructure bill and the potential and the investment that that's going to bring to Phoenix, and looking forward to working with Eric and others specifically on the electric vehicle piece and, you know, charging infrastructure that we can bring here, leveraging those funds. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stark.
No, great presentation. I've seen it before. And just as a reminder, with regards to the gas tax, we're also looking at alternative methods to pay for our roads because we're going more electric. So hopefully we'll stay on top of that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilmember, in fact, we may reword that language to look for a better funding formula for highways and byways because of that very nature. And it's not just a fuel tax that's going to pay for it anymore. So we are looking at that.
That'd be great. I think you've heard me say before, because I drive a hybrid, I'm probably not paying my fair share.
We didn't want to call you out.
Well, now I'm going to go get a hybrid car. Okay, do we need?
Yeah,
Yes, we need an action? Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
So moved that the staff recommends.
Second.
Second, that staff approval by the Economic Development and Equity Subcommittee to propose 2020 state and federal agenda items. I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I hear no nays. Ayes pass. Motion passes. Thank you. Now, exterior rehabilitation grants. Michelle Dodd's all excited. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but Michelle Dodd is now going to retire. And we're going to beg her to stay a little. And she says, no, I'm ready to go.
Chairwoman Pastor, thank you for acknowledging the retirement of Michelle Dodds, who has served as Historic Preservation Officer for the city. So we are very thankful for all her contributions over the years. We are sad to see her go, but excited for her retirement and the new whatever holds for you in the future. So we wish you all the best, Michelle. I believe Alan Stevenson, our Planning and Development Director, is going to kick off this item, and then we'll hand it over to Michelle Dodds.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Spencer. Chairwoman Pastor, members of the subcommittee. It is with sad hearts that we announced Michelle Dodd's retirement. I certainly have enjoyed working with her over the years. She has been fantastic in a myriad of positions within the department, and most recently as our Historic Preservation Officer. We will be going forward and doing a recruitment, but she has, told us that come January 14th, she is going to, retire and do other things in life. So we wish her well in those efforts. For this agenda item here, we are here to talk about awarding $200,000 in historic preservation exterior rehabilitation grants for repairs to homes. This money was allocated by City Council as part of the 21-22 budget cycle. In total, we did get 62 applications. And those applications came all the way in through October 18th of this year. And then on November 1, there was a grant panel that was seated. And of those 62 applications, they selected 12 based upon preservation standards addressing critical needs, the visual impact, revitalization impacts, and efforts. And now with that, I will have Michelle walk us through each of those 12 ones, and they'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, members of the subcommittee, very happy to present to you the grant panel's recommendations for 12 of the 62 applications. The first is 310 West Monte Vista Road in the Willow Historic District. It's for to replace wood shingle roof with hand cut to match the size and shape to recreate the roof's sweeping, overlapping, waving pattern. Total project costs $84,760 and grant request $20,000. $20,000 was the maximum someone could ask, and I should say that these are matching grant funds, so they have to spend at least the same amount as the grant request. The next item, 40 East Hoover Avenue. This is in the Ashland Place Historic District. The work is structural engineering, repointing 4 piers, 2 chimneys, and reworking the southeast corner. Project cost $12,745, and the grant amount would be $6,373.50. 136 West Almeria Road in the Willow Historic District. Stucco repair, repair wood trim and window repair, paint wood and stucco, create crimped steel mesh screen coverings for 4 crawl spaces, and repair or replace 8 roof vents and paint.
Wood trim and window repair include repair of 10 purlins, repair of 8 severed sash cords, and repair of 24 double-hung windows. Project cost $19,601. Grant request $9,800.50. 1322 West Portland Street in the FQ Story Historic District. Repair of post and beam foundation. The cost of that work, $96,979.64, and their grant request is $20,000. 1125 West Culver Street in the FQ Story Historic District. Replace the roof on the house and garage with the same shaped diamond pattern made by Castle Top metal material. Current roof is fibrous cement with asbestos. Project cost $41,760. Grant request $20,000. 1133 West Holly Street in Encanto Palmcroft Historic District. Replace the asphalt shingle roof to replicate the original cedar shingles. Project cost $21,750. Grant request $10,875. 525 and 527 West Portland Street in the Roosevelt Historic District. Roof repair to replace the underlayment and clay tile on the garage and rear of the home and restore 4 wood windows. Project costs $40,093. Grant request is $20,000. 1912 West Holly Street is in the Villa Verde Historic District. It is for foundation repair to reproduce wood windows, to reproduce the entry door, and masonry, stucco, and paint repairs. Total project costs $46,085.02, and the grant request is $20,000. 1348 West Portland Street in the FQ Story Historic District. To restore 30 wood frame windows. Project cost $40,650. Grant request $20,000. 1644 Palmcroft Way Southwest in Encanto Palmcroft Historic District. To remove stucco and clean the brick. To replace double hung windows. Project cost $19,641 and grant request $9,820. 2217 North Laurel Avenue, that is in the Fairview Place Historic District, and that is for foundation stabilization. The total cost is $20,258.89. The grant request $11,125.30. And then 301 West Almeria Road, this is the 12th one. That's in the Willow Historic District. And 301 West Almeria Road, the work is to replace the roof, reuse the clay tiles as much as possible, stucco repair, window restoration, French door repair, and paint. Project cost is $61,050 and grant request is $20,000. The grant review process started with the grant panel that met on November 1st and recommended the 12 applications. I do want to note the grant panel did spend the entire day from, I believe, 8:30 in the morning until about 7:30 in the evening reviewing those 62 applications. And last night, the Historic Preservation Commission did recommend the 12 applications suggested by the grant panel, and that was unanimous. And here you have the recommendation to approve these 12 applications, which amount to $186,997.45.
Chairman Pastor, members of the subcommittee, with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
I have an off question. The clay tiles, roof, there has to be experts in that in order to replace that.
Yeah, Chair Pastor, members of the subcommittee, there are people that do specialize in rehabilitation of historic properties, and that's one of the things we look at. The grant, those requesting the grants do submit bids, and one of the things we do look at is the experience of the person doing the work. And yes, there are definitely trades people that specialize in those areas.
I mean, that's where the cost is. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I have clay tile roof that I had to replace, which it took me a while to find somebody in that specialty and did cost a lot. My question is, if I apply for the grant this year, like the last one I saw, I think it was 96 or something, can I apply for the following year?
That's an excellent question, Chair, members of the subcommittee. What the city gets in exchange for the grant money is a conservation easement on the property, and the terms, the length of that easement will vary depending on how much money is provided. But I will say that you can, even if you receive a grant one year, it is possible to apply and receive a grant in a subsequent year. You would just have to extend that conservation easement. And for those that weren't successful this year and being chosen by the panel, they can apply again next year. And when the council makes final decision, we will send a letter not only to the award recipients, but those who did not receive an award, to let them know, to let them know any deficiencies in their application, but also let them know that they can apply again, because that $200,000 amount is on an annual basis. And so since, the last grant round was in 2015, so it's been about 5 or 6 years now. So I think that's why you saw so many applications. So it was really difficult for the grant panel and the commission to have to turn away so many people, because if we had more money, we could have awarded more grants. So I think that's just because it's been so long since we have had a grant round.
Well, thank you for all your work. And I understand Councilwoman Stark was the one in charge during the hiring of Michelle Dodds. Good job. Do I have a motion? You need a motion, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chairwoman Pastor, staff is asking for EDE subcommittee approval to recommend the 12 applications totaling $186,997.45 to full city council for approval.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and 2 seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. I hear no nays. Thank you. Now, somewhere in all my paperwork, I put everything away. I believe I have future agenda items. Anybody want to add anything to the future agenda items? There's the Housing Department to serve as Pride's fiscal agent, the Key Economic Indicators Quarterly Report, and the Affordable Housing Funding Options. Anybody want anything? Going once, going twice. Meeting adjourned.